Hello everybody, I'm Brian DeShazor and welcome to the James Baldwin Teach-In, presented by This Way Out, the international LGBTQ radio magazine show heard on over 150 radio stations around the world and produced since 1988, founded by Lucia Chappelle, Greg Gordon, Cindy Friedman, and a small group of dedicated queer radio broadcasters. And here we are 33 years later with a new presentation, new events, new charge. Oh, there's my cat, little Billy. Hi, Billy the kitty. Hello. And so I'm just going to be with you for the first maybe 10 minutes to introduce you to the event, give you guys enough time to sort of join in and tell you a little bit about my relationship with James Baldwin. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to do some flower arranging because I don't want to, that. I'm radio, that's why. So let's get started. I'm going to make a little arrangement using this bowl, and it has a little frog in it. And I've got a bunch of peonies, hydrangea, some of those lily things. I've got some of this called distressed willow. This is some yard hydrangea, and I have some leaves over there that I might get in a minute. But here we are at the James Baldwin Teach-In, and welcome again to those of you who are just joining in. I'm Brian DeShazor, and my relationship with James Baldwin started in 1999, 2002 really. I was the director of the Pacifica Radio Archives, part of a 5-station network that has been around since 1949. So I initiated the Preservation and Access Project at the advent of the digital age there. And one of the first grants we got was from the National Endowment for the Arts. And then one of these recordings of James Baldwin was in that very first pilot project for audio digitization. That was when the grant funders and the industry and the profession were actually working out the methods of preservation. So enough about that. Let's talk about the voice of James Baldwin. Prior to that, my personal relationship, I was a teenage reader, read Maya Angelou, Richard Wright, Zora Neale Hurston, what was basically on the high school and college curriculum. And somehow Baldwin never entered into that list. So it really wasn't up until the Pacifica Radio Archives with one of these recordings that I actually heard not only who he was, but what the expansiveness of his writing was, and what it meant. So his voice really struck me first, which is why we're here to give a gift to you and share not only Baldwin's voice, but the work of preservation that I did there with staff at the Pacifica Radio Archives. And thanks to them for letting This Way Out use these recordings in presentation and as a gift for donors. This is a fundraiser benefiting Overnight Productions, Inc., which is the umbrella nonprofit 501c3 that produces This Way Out and distributes it. And we'll hear more about that later on in between the performances and readings of Baldwin by Lucia Chappelle and Greg Gordon, talking about the founding of This Way Out and why it's still needed in the media landscape today. News by and about LGBT communities around the world on public broadcasting, free. When you're driving down the car, you can turn the dial and sometimes there'll be a This Way Out program. So, I haven't started my thing. All right, so let's start with a pink hydrangea. We'll do that, and we'll do it like that. Wait, like that. Yeah. And so what we're going to hear today is, let's do a peony. We're going to strip this down. What we are going to hear today are both how contemporary people will present Baldwin. Charles Reese, who's a cultural architect. I'm going to get this right. So author and cultural architect for public engagement. He's an actor, multi-talented man, and we're going to see him be engaging with an audience and Baldwin, and his story about the relationship between Baldwin and Bayard Rustin, who's also part of the gift collection of the audio collection of 20 recordings for a donation of $100 to This Way Out and Overnight Productions. You can go online to thiswayout.org and make a donation there, and that would be wonderful. And as part of the donation, you will get a free weekly newsletter that gives you inside information about This Way Out and how it's produced, where we get our resources of news, and more storytelling. You know, there'll be a sort of a long, engaged process with Baldwin and This Way Out as we present some of these recordings on the radio. So we're starting today with presenting our, I think it's 90 minutes and maybe 80 minutes. We haven't even timed it out yet. But it's not too long. It's not 12 hours like last year's Global Queer Read-In that we did, which actually was where we found Alfre Woodard and Paul Outlaw. They performed for us last year as part of a 12-hour Global Queer Read-In, which we had 35 members of the queer community presenting their favorite queer literature. But 12 hours, seriously. So now we have something a little bit deeper. All right, so I'm not going to use the lilies because we already have two different flowers. So now let's get some, let's get this thing going. So now we have the opportunity to look at, oh no, that's not going to do it. All right, so we're almost 7 minutes in, so we're going to wrap it up here in a minute and get going. But I wanted to thank Alfre Woodard. I want to thank the Alfonso David, the president of the Human Rights Campaign. I'd like to thank Alberto at the Human Rights Campaign for helping us with Alfonso David interview. Get Lit Poet, Words Ignite, Giovanna Tankow. Thank you so much for your response poem. You're going to be amazed at her performance. Alfre Woodard, Paul Outlaw, and I'd like to thank Jason Jen, who was the videographer for our Baldwin clips, and Eric Klein, Jason Lavolio. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't gonna get his name wrong. Well, it might be on the end credits. Anyway, Jason, thanks a lot. And Lucia Chappelle, Rebecca Drapkin, Greg Gordon, and the board of directors. Thanks for everybody for helping put this together. And look, my little candlelight's showing on my flowers. Well, you might get the picture of the results of all these arrangements, because I thought I was going to be able to do a whole bunch of them in 10 minutes, but evidently I wasn't. But you'll see the results of this one later on. Get the newsletter, sign up, make a donation, and then you'll see that. And we'll talk more about the presentations of Baldwin, and one of my favorite things is the playlist. Here's a little secret. By getting the gift, you get all these expansive recordings. I've clipped out 1-2 minute excerpts and then entered them into my playlist. And in between an Aretha Franklin and a Marvin Gaye song will be Baldwin speaking, and that is really special. So maybe in that newsletter I'll share with you my playlist and how that happens, and even what clips I make. Anyway, thanks for joining us here today on the James Baldwin Teach-In, and enjoy. Bye.